All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. As Dee Dee said, my name's Cindy Hollowell. I'm the sales engineer for Sage Payroll. We really appreciate Oasis giving us this opportunity to share with you our Sage Payroll Services offerings, including today we'll be looking at payroll and our ACA Comply tool, which will help you stay in compliance with the Affordable Care Act for any organizations that meet that 50 full-time equivalent requirement. We'll start with payroll today and then move into the ACA tool, and then we have a couple of additional modules we can discuss toward the end of the presentation. What you should be seeing on your screen is the home page. This is what you would see when you first log into payroll. If you do have multiple companies, multiple federal IDs, we would set the system up with each federal ID individually within the system. You can see the name of the company in the upper right corner, and you're able to switch between companies by using this change link without logging out and logging back in. On the home page, down the right-hand side, you see the status of your pay runs. My demo company is set up for a weekly payroll. We will use this open pay run today. The next scheduled pay run would come off of your regular pay calendar. The messages that you see across the top of the page are messages that come from Sage. We have the ability to post messages for our clients to see. This is not anything that you would need to respond to. These are more informational, maybe a new feature coming out in the system or a reminder about an upcoming banking holiday. Down below on the right, you have standard reports. There are just about 70 standard reports available within the system, and these, I call these on-demand type reports. These are the reports that if you need information, you can come and run one of these to get whatever data you need. You also would receive a package of payroll reports when you after you submit your pay run, and I will show you those as well. But these would be more historical reports. There's deduction reports, quite a few employee level reports, and to access any of these, you just click on the report title, which is a link, and it will take you to a page showing you parameters for this report. Every report has its own unique parameters, and this is how you tell the system what data you want to include on the report. For the employee list, the parameter is the employee status, and that will show us all but terminated employees or any employee status that you might want to see on your report. And then on this report, we also have sorting and grouping options. This is just different ways to sort the report. Reports can be viewed in a PDF format or in Excel. When you create a report in Excel, it's not just an image of the report in a spreadsheet. We do actually use the columns and rows, giving you the ability to further manipulate the report once you've created it. I'm going to start over here with employee information, and what you're seeing on the screen now is is all of the employee information set up for this company. The way this works is if you choose to move forward with Sage Payroll Services, you will work with a conversion specialist, and we would convert all of your current year employee data. This would be anyone who's worked for you in the current year, and we do this so that at the end of the year we can generate all of your W-2s for you. After you go live, you then would be able to add any new employees using this Add New link. This is a wizard that walks you through key pages of data for you to set up those new employees. Any new employees that you add will have a default status of new hire pending, and that is our indication that this person needs to be reported to the state. In addition to processing the payroll, our service includes the new hire reporting to the state. And this new hire pending status is our indicator that this is someone we need to report. At the top of the page you have filters, and this is how you can search for different employees within your organization. I'm going to select Finance, and now I see all of the people assigned to the Finance department. But you can also search by name, employee number, status, or division. We'll select Jennifer today to take a look at her profile. Now that we're in Jennifer's employee record, all of the pages down the left relate to Jennifer. It's demographics down to direct deposit. These are the pages that the wizard will take you through, and we'll take a look at each of these options. Then there are some additional pages that we'll take a look at as well that contain information that's not necessarily required for payroll processing. The demographics page is where you'll see all the personal information about your employee as well as their contact information. The employment page is all about Jennifer as an employee. You can see here her employee number, the pay group that she's associated with. So if you have a weekly and a biweekly payroll, or a biweekly and a semi-monthly, you'll see those pay groups identified here. We can process people that receive a W-2 as well as a 1099. The only requirement is that you must have at least one employee who receives a W-2. Their job title can be specified, as well as who this employee reports to. To include someone in this supervisor or reports to drop-down, it's just a simple flag to indicate that this employee is a supervisor. And then over here on the right side, we've got some organizational codes. Now the department code, this is Jennifer's home department, and the department typically drives where their pay is charged in the general ledger. There are some additional options that I'll show you as we move into some of these additional pages, or you can override where their pay is charged when you go in to run a payroll. This is just their home department. Then we also offer division, location, and organization codes, and these are primarily used for reporting purposes. They're not required, so if you don't group your employees by division, that's not a problem. You don't have to use these fields. And then you have several dates that you can track. The rates and salaries page is where you'll define whether the employee is paid as an hourly or a salaried employee. And Jennifer is salaried, so down here in the amounts section, you would define a pay period salary amount. The system will convert that to an annualized total. And notice that your rates and salaries are updated by effective date. What this means is you can put in future changes. If Jennifer's pay were going to be increased as of November 1st, we could go ahead and put that rate change in, and it would just sit there until the payroll that included November 1st. You do need to be a little careful if your increase falls in the middle of a pay period. The system is not going to automatically prorate that amount. So if you can put in your rate changes at the effective the beginning of a pay period, it will make it a little bit easier for you. Hourly people will have hourly rates, and I say rates because people can have multiple rates if they earn different amounts for different types of work that they do. Any rate or salary changes are automatically updated in history. We track the history of all of your rate changes by effective date. There also is a change reason code that you can use to track why you made a change. And on the far right of the page, you can see the username of the person that made the change, as well as the date and time stamp for when the change was made. The taxes page shows you the tax withholding status for this employee. This includes your federal, state, and if any of you are processing in states that require local taxes, we would include those on this page as well. We will also, Sage will set up any deduction codes that you need. These are configured specific to your needs. What deduction types do you have? What taxing rules are assigned to those deduction codes, calculation methods, and then you can assign those deduction codes to the appropriate employee as you're adding a new employee. So you can see I have medical, AFLAC, dental, uniform, some 401k. Any type of deduction that you need will define during your conversion. And then finally, direct deposit. We do offer to pay your employees by check or direct deposit, or if you're trying to get to 100% direct deposit, but you have some people that don't have bank accounts, we also have a pay card offering. And what that is a reloadable debit card that has a Visa logo on it that your employees can use like a debit card, and every payroll, their pay is reloaded on that card. For payroll processing, it works just like a direct deposit, and we can provide you additional information about that if necessary. For those people that do use direct deposit, you can define multiple direct deposit instructions for them. Jennifer has $200 going into savings at one bank, and then the remainder of her check goes into her checking account at a different bank. So those are your required pages. Then we can move into some of these additional pages that contain information like the allocations. If you have people that maybe wear multiple hats within your organization and you need their pay to be allocated across multiple departments in your general ledger, you can define that through this allocation page. This is a fixed allocation where every payroll, we want 75% of Jennifer's pay to go to the finance department, and we want 25% to be charged to the warehouse. So this is more of a fixed allocation. You can enter an allocation that fluctuates every payroll when you run that, when we run the payroll. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the pay grid. We can track dependent information for your employees on the employee dependent page, as well as the documents used to verify eligibility to work on the I-9 page. We also have the ability to set up custom fields. This is any additional data that you might need to track for your employees. And you can see I have two categories of data, certification information as well as driver's license information. So any additional fields that you need to track, we can set those up based on the data you need. The system also includes the ability to track time off plans. I have two time off plans, a sick and a vacation plan. This is specific to your needs, but when we come in and look at the vacation information, you can see mine is a plan that accrues hours every pay period. You can define carryover rules. Does the employee have the ability to carry over hours at the end of the year or based on their anniversary date? And then the amount taken and the remaining balance will print on the employee's pay stub. We can also define a maximum allowed balance. If Jennifer's balance gets to 160 hours, the system will stop accruing until she takes some time off and her balance drops below that amount. Any of these different calculation methods are optional. We'll set this up based on your specific needs. And then we do have a workers' comp offering. This could be just as simple as a workers' comp report that we generate every payroll, or we do have a partnership with a workers' comp provider if you need a higher level of service there. The view check data is where you as the administrator can come in and look at all of the check history for this employee. Your check history is summarized by year, so once we reach the end of 2016, I can collapse that and view next year's pay history. To look at the pay stub, you just click on any of those pay stub items and it will bring up a PDF of that pay stub. The pay stub will include your company information up in the upper right, along with the employee's earnings, taxes, deductions, their time off balance down at the bottom, and if this is a check, you would see the net pay amount. In this case, we have a direct deposit, so we see the distribution. Now, your employees on direct deposit have several different options for receiving a pay stub or receiving this pay information. They can have a login to the system. Employees that log in, when they set up their username and profile, they will only have access to the Pay View tab. They will see all of their pay stub history, and after the end of the year, they would see their W-2s. In addition to that, we have the ability to set up automated text notifications to employees. Now, this doesn't provide them their full pay stub. They still would need to log in order to see that, but they can receive a text message the day before the check date, and you as the administrators can decide what time you want those texts delivered, so they could go out at 8 o'clock at night the day before the check date, but it would let the employee know the net amount of the check and the last 4 digits of the bank account number. In this example, Jennifer would receive 2 texts for her 2 different net deposits going into her 2 different accounts. So it's kind of a nice option for employees to be able to see what I think people really want to know, and that's the net amount, what's going into their bank accounts. If they do want that full pay stub, they can log in and see the Pay View tab. Now, as the payroll administrators, when we process payroll and you get your payroll reports, you also will receive a file with all of your direct deposit advices. So if you would like to print those for your employees, that those direct deposit advices, that's an option as well. So we'll come back over to the home page, and we'll come in and access our current open pay run. When you come into an open pay run, you come in on a pay grid. This is also what you would see if you opened a new pay run. Your pay grid includes all of your employee information for everyone being paid. Across the top of the pay grid, you have different earnings categories. This is all defined during your implementation. So I have several hours-based earnings codes. I have a few dollars-based earnings codes. And if I scroll over a little bit, I have some non-taxable earnings codes. This includes expense reimbursement and mileage. So any different ways that you pay your employees, we can set up earnings categories within the pay grid. You notice that your salaried employees, their salaries can default into the pay grid so that you don't have to manually enter that information. You can override it if you need to, or if you have someone who's responsible for entering hours for employees that you don't want them to see salaries, we can also mask these amounts. Your hourly people, you will either input the hours, or we do have the ability to import data. I think in a couple, next week, Oasis is also hosting a demo of the Sage Time solution. The Sage Time solution will provide you with a payroll file that you can then import directly into the pay grid. All you'll do is come in and select the payroll file for this week, and you'll import it. And you can see that my file successfully imported with no errors. The Sage Time and Sage Payroll are integrated. It's a single source of information for your employees. As you add a new employee to payroll, we automatically sync that data over to Sage Time. So the payroll record is your system of record for employee information. Anytime you update information for an employee, we'll sync that over to Sage Time as well. If we come back to the pay grid, now that we imported the data, you can now see all of my hourly employees have hours based on how they clocked in and out or tracked their data through Sage Time. Once that data's been imported, if you need to make changes to it or add additional pay items, you can do that just by selecting the employee, and clicking on the employee name will load their information down here into the edit section of the pay grid. Now we can see clearly Christina had 40 hours with 3 hours of overtime brought in through the import, and maybe she's also eligible for a bonus, so I could tab over to the bonus column and enter that information. When you press enter on your keyboard, it will save that information and move you to the next person on the pay grid. Maybe Kenneth doesn't have any changes this pay period, but Jackie also is eligible for that $250 bonus. I do have a few people in my pay grid that were not part of my import file. And that could be the case. You could have some people that track their time through a time clock and other people that keep a manual timesheet. And in that case, you just would come in and manually enter their hours. Chad worked 40 hours with 2 hours of overtime. Anita worked 32 hours and took a day of vacation. Andrew's our CEO. I don't need to make any changes to his record, so I'll just press enter. Cliff worked 24 hours and was out sick a couple of days, and Bonnie also worked for 40 hours with some overtime. So whether you're importing hours, manually entering, or making any adjustments to your salaried employees, I hope you can see how easy it is to get your payroll data into the system. Once you've gotten everything onto the pay grid, you'll come up to this Calculate button at the top of your pay grid, and this is where you will do the calculation for payroll. The system is calculating the gross to net amounts for your pay run, and as soon as it's finished, we'll provide you with a preliminary payroll register. And the preliminary payroll register will allow you to verify that everything is correct in the pay run. So now that it's finished, you can see the checks calculated message. Just below that checks calculated message is a reports drop down. This is where you'll see that preliminary payroll register. This will also come up in a PDF format. Make it a little bit bigger. And here you can see for each employee, there's a section on the report which will show their earnings, the taxes calculated for this pay run, their deductions, and their net pay. My report is coming out in alphabetical order by employee last name. We can set the system up to provide you department or division subtotals through the preliminary register. Whatever makes it easiest for you to be able to verify that everything is correct within your pay run. At the very bottom of the register is a total section for the whole company. And here you can see all of the hours and dollars calculated for the company and your total net pay. If you were to find a mistake here, maybe you forgot to enter something, or your sick hours didn't add up and you wanted to go back and check it, you can come back to that pay grid, make any additional changes, and then recalculate your checks. You can do that as many times as you need to. Up until 2 days prior to your check date, we will need you to submit the pay run. So just for example, if your pay date falls on a Friday, and you would submit your pay run by 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. If your payday is a Thursday, you would submit by 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, 2 days prior to your check date. And once you submit that pay run, that's when our operations group takes over, and we will print any checks that you might need, and we'll overnight those to you so that you'll have them in the first UPS delivery on payday. We'll process your direct deposit, file with the bank, we'll prepare your payroll reports, pay all of the taxes on your behalf, do all of your payroll tax filing for you. We will, at the end of the year, prepare and send you all of your W-2s and electronically file those as of year end. We also will for those that need it, talk about the ACA tracking for you. Now, all of your payroll reports will be delivered through this front row tab. You'll be able to see all of your payroll reports archived out here. We default these dates to just the last month, but you can expand these dates and pull up any payroll reports that you've processed within the Sage Payroll Services. Also on the front row reports tab, you will be able to see your tax filing that we do for you. That's on the end of period tab. So every quarter you'll have a reports bundle out here, as well as after year end you'll be able to get an electronic copy of all of your W-2s here. The payroll yes.
I'm sorry, it's Dee Dee. I have a question. Can you take it now?
Absolutely.
Okay, the question is, if we use the Payroll Full Service, will you issue third-party checks for garnishments, child support, 401k, etc.?
We will. There's a couple of options for garnishments and child supports, tax levies, that kind of thing. If the agency allows for an electronic payment, we can set that up to electronically pay those. If they do not, we can cut the third-party checks. We will return those to the client with their paychecks, and they would then be able to forward those on to the appropriate agency. For 401k, if you're using one of our preferred 401k providers, we can electronically submit those funds to the provider. If you're using a provider that we don't have a direct relationship with, we do not move those funds for you. We can provide you with a report which will tell you exactly the amount that needs to be sent to the provider. We just don't move the money. Are there any other questions?
Not right at this time. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm going to pull up the payroll reports that you'll get. Now, we do send these reports. We can send these to you through an email, but we do password protect them. We want to make sure that only the person authorized to receive the payroll reports has access. And some of the reports that you can receive in the package include a direct deposit report showing you all of the direct deposit transactions processed with this pay run. We also will provide a check reconciliation report, and this will show you any checks that we printed. When we print checks, we draw them on your bank account, so these will clear when the employee cashes the check. The cash analysis report will show you the total cash required for this pay run. And you can see it includes the check information. These are those checks that we print, and EFT transactions. Now, the EFT amounts, the net amount of your direct deposit, the service charge that you pay to Sage, and your total tax liability for this pay run, these will be pulled from your payroll account at midnight after you submit your pay run. So we talked about the pay run being submitted 2 days prior to your check date. Let's say you're going on vacation this week and you want to submit your pay run the week before. You're welcome to do that. We won't pull these funds until midnight after your scheduled submission date. So we still will, if your scheduled submission date is Wednesday, we'll still pull these Wednesday night at midnight or Thursday morning, even if you submit your pay run the Friday before. The tax amount we do hold in escrow until the taxes are due, and then we'll pay those on your behalf. You will receive a final check register. This is just like the preliminary register, only now it includes voucher numbers and check numbers. You'll get a deduction report, which will show for each deduction code all of the employees that had that deduction and the dollar amounts withheld from their check. For those employees on direct deposit, I mentioned you would receive a file with all the direct deposit advices. This is very similar to the advice that we looked at before, only now it does include a stub. These are non-negotiable. You can print these on plain paper if you would like to hand them out to your employees. You will receive an invoice, and this will just show you for the service charge that you pay to Sage, what makes up that total, and then finally a tax liability report. This will show you for each taxing authority the tax amount that was calculated and withheld this payroll, and then the due date for the taxes. When we pay these taxes on your behalf, we also will send you a confirmation email. And then the last thing payroll related really has to do with how do we get all this information over to your general ledger. We have an integration defined for Sage 50 and Sage 100, and these you do have to be on the current version, 2016 version of Sage 50 or Sage 100. We will bring in your chart of accounts, and we will map to that chart of accounts all of your payroll components. In my example, my components are mapped by department and payroll components. So that's deductions, taxes, earnings codes, net pay, your bank account. All of those things will be mapped for that general ledger integration. And every payroll that you run, you'll have a, although we call it a download, it's not actually a download, it's more of a synchronization. And I'll show you how that works for Sage 100. In your payroll reports, you will receive a Payroll GL Posting report. This will show you the journal entries that are created based on that account mapping. You will then go into Sage 100, and under the Payroll Services, there's a synchronization wizard. It will prompt you to put in your payroll username and password. As soon as it has authenticated you as someone who should have access to perform this task, it will start synchronizing your journal entries over into Sage 100. When it's done, you can click the Finish button, and you'll be able to see those journal entries, the header and the detail lines for all of that payroll activity. So the last thing that we wanted to talk about today really is the Affordable Care Act. And we do also offer a module for any of you that have 50 full-time equivalents. We do offer an ACA Comply module. There are two things that this ACA tool will do for you, and I'm going to use the resource page to show you those. The first is the calculation of hours for any part-time employees. For those of you that may not be familiar with this terminology, within the Affordable Care Act, it says that you can define a measurement period. The measurement period is anywhere from 3 months to 12 months in length, and this is sometimes also called the look-back period. And it's during this period that we will accumulate the hours that you pay your employees through payroll, and at the end of every month you'll be able to process a report that will tell you anyone whose measurement period ended this month and if they met the full-time status under the Affordable Care Act. So it will look at all of your employee hours, and if you have any part-time or variable hour employees that worked more than an average of 30 hours per week, you will then need to offer them coverage, and that takes place during the admin period. The admin period can be anywhere from 0 to 90 days in length, and this is the time frame when you'll offer them coverage and they can make their elections. If they do elect your coverage, they will then get to keep it through the stability period. The stability period, the length of the stability period matches the length of your measurement period. So even if I qualify in measurement period 1, even if immediately my hours drop, I qualified through measurement period 1 and get to keep that coverage through stability period 1. Each of the rows on this graphic are independent of each other. So as soon as measurement period 1 ends, measurement period 2 starts. And you're now evaluating my hours to see if I get offered insurance for stability period 2. We will set up your measurement period, your admin period, and we will automatically do all of these calculations based on the hours that you paid people through payroll. And then the second thing that the system will do for you is all of the IRS annual reporting. There are two key reports. One is a 1095-C. This is the employer transmittal form. We'll complete this with all of your employer information, including all of your employee counts here on the second page, and we will electronically file all of this with the IRS. For any full-time employees within your organization, we will complete the 1095-C. For all employers, we complete Part 1 and Part 2, and for anyone who is self-insured, we will also provide you a place to track dependent information so we can complete Part 3 of this form. Just like with your W-2s, we will print these and send these to you for you to distribute to your employees. So I think we wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions, and but before we do that, I also wanted to just give you a brief introduction to our human capital management modules. And these are modules, we have a couple that we're currently offering, and we will be rolling out additional modules throughout later this year and early next year. We currently offer a recruit module, which is an applicant tracking tool, and an electronic onboarding module. Now we may be offering another webinar coming up to show you more detail about these if this is something you're interested in, but the recruit would also include a career site that candidates could come to your website and apply for jobs. The electronic onboarding would allow new hires to come online and complete new hire paperwork. Later this fall, next month is when it's scheduled, we'll be offering Perform, which is an online performance appraisal module. Later, toward the end of the year, we'll be offering Manage, which will give you the ability to automate through workflows any employee personnel changes For example, managers could initiate pay raises or promotions, and that could be routed for approval to different people within the organization. And then the last module, which will roll out in the first quarter next year, is the benefit enrollment piece. So we have a lot of exciting things coming, but you do notice that payroll is the center of the HCM suite. So all of these additional modules will seamlessly integrate with the payroll platform that we just reviewed. So that was everything that I had planned to show you today. Dee Dee, do we have any additional questions?
Yes, I have one. It says, do we have the ability to create our own reports?
You do. We can include an ad hoc reporting tool, and this would allow you to create any custom reports that you need. You can see I have several samples here, and some of them do include charts and graphs. This is also, actually, let me make my screen a little bit smaller and it'll be easier to see. This particular report is an employee list by division, but I also included an employee count by location, this little chart, and then I included a graph of compensation by department and employee count by status. So this report kind of grew and includes a lot of information. The nice part about this ad hoc reporting, if you do have multiple companies, this tool allows you to report across companies. So this can be very important to organizations that do have multiple organizations, and then your reports can be saved in several different formats. So ad hoc reporting is an additional capability if anyone needs that.
Okay, great. Thank you. There was one other question. They said, can we configure what a user has access to within the system?
Yes, up here on the Settings tab, this is where we'll see all of the employees that have access to the system. And if we come in and take a look at Mark's profile, if you have multiple companies, you can indicate which company an employee has access to. So you could come in and give them access to multiple organizations or just one. And then over here on the left-hand side, you can configure what functions a user has access to. For example, Mark adds new employees to the system, but he has view-only access to any current employee data, and he has no access to be able to start a pay run or submit a pay run or do the pay run data entry. So through any of these functions, you can control what a user has access to.
Okay, great. It doesn't look like there's any other questions, so Cindy, we thank you so much for taking the time today. And as you did mention, we are having a Sage 100C webinar demo tomorrow by Annette at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard. And then on Tuesday, September 27th, like Cindy mentioned, there is going to be a webinar on the time function. So that is at 11 a.m. next Tuesday. So hopefully y'all can join us for that. But we thank you for your time today, and thank you again, Cindy.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.